the structure of the course is walking you through the growing season. So I like to say if this is the end of one growing season at this point, it's also the beginning of the next growing season. So now is the time to start preparing for next year. And if you do it well, my experience is some major benefits can be accrued. So we talked today primarily about fall and winter, strategies, principles, priorities, processes, and then the course in January, I think it's in January, will be spring and summer. So all the particulars of planting and transplanting and foliar spraying and all that kind of stuff is not going to be covered today. Today is going to be things like soil testing and mineral balancing, cover cropping and mulching and tillage, compost, inoculation, seed quality, and sort of background matrix perspective. So that's the basic agenda. That's where we're going. So we're going to go to what is the biological system, how does it work, and then we'll start talking about soil tests and mineral balancing, and then proceed on from there. All right. So people who have seen me present in the past have probably seen me draw this picture. I think it's a really good framework to start the conversation with. So I'm going to do it again. I'll have to draw this little stick figure plant, and say, as I understand it, in every leaf, in every plant, especially the green ones, which is most leaves, most times, what causes them to be green is this chloroplast, chlorophyll. And what's happening in the chlorophyll, in the chloroplast, is that carbon dioxide and water and sunlight are being converted into sugar and oxygen. People know that? Where was that from ninth grade biology class or wherever you may or may not have learned, right? This is a foundational, this is why the leaves are green, is that the chloroplast has that, it is green, and that's, leaves are full of them. As somebody who's, as a farmer who's trying to figure out how to be more economically viable, how to grow, high quality food for my family, etc., understanding how nature designed the system to me seems very important. And so I want to just emphasize this aspect. My understanding is that in a healthy plant, and the caveat, this is a big caveat, is healthy. In a healthy plant, as much as 2/3 of that sugar is taken by the plant and dropped down through the stem, down through the root, and it's injected into the soil. 2/3 of the sugar that the leaf manufactures is not used directly by the plant, but literally injected into the soil. Actually, some of it's injected through the leaf surface, out of the surface of the leaf. But the question is why. I'm sure a number of people here know the answer to the question, why. Why do plants do this? To feed the soil life, to feed their gut flora. I like to think of it, we know that when you were born or when a cow is born, there is nobody living between your mouth and your rear end, right? The whole alimentary canal, all 40 feet of it. There's nobody in there, and yet you can't digest your food without people living inside of you, right? I think 9 out of 10 cells in your body are not human. People know this one? Right? 90% of the DNA in your body is not human. We are a beautifully synergistic ecosystem. We think of ourselves as an organism. Like, I am an animal, I'm a human animal, and the bacteria are over here, and the plants are over there. As I understand it, it's a beautiful synergy, and we can't exist without them. We can't function without them. What's in the mother's milk, actually before the milk, called colostrum. When the baby's born, right, the first thing that comes out of the breast is called colostrum. It's not milk, and that is evolved and designed to help establish gut flora, to help get those people in your gut who can digest your food for you, because you can't digest your food for you. Only they can do it. My understanding is plants are the same way. Plants can't digest the soil by themselves. Plants did not evolve to digest the soil by themselves. Plants evolved to feed the bacteria and the fungi in the soil who then digest the soil and then feed it back up to the plant. There's this beautiful symbiotic relationship. The more the plant grows, the more sugar it manufactures, the more food it has for the soil life, the more the soil life it eats, the more it reproduces, the more it goes about its business, the more it feeds the plant. It's this beautiful virtuous circle. And to me, as I understand it, that's the sort of foundational precepts here. So I like to think of this area sort of immediately surrounding the root zone. Of course, the roots are much more fractal in nature. Right? This is a very simplified picture. But everything in the zone is called the rhizosphere. And this is really the bacteria, because the fungi, hopefully, are reaching out way beyond the roots. Right? You can have something like 90% of a healthy plant's root system, if it's fungally inoculated, is the fungi. 10% of the root system is the roots. 90% is the fungi. There's this, throughout this whole system, we have to understand there's a symbiosis going on between the kingdoms, and they support each other and feed each other. So this concept of germs being bad, fungus being bad, bacteria being bad, maybe 2% of the species are pathogenic, are bad, but about 98% are symbiotic. And so, as I understand it, only when the rhizosphere is flourishing, only when there's a lot of happy people in the soil, should we expect our plant to be healthy. Everybody's okay with that? Basic concept? So this for me is foundational to the whole process. It's really about creating a healthy ecosystem for the life in the soil. There's also life on the leaf surface. It's called the phytoplankton. There's various words for it, and we can talk about that later. So the question of growing healthy plants, for me, has to be focused on creating an environment for soil life to flourish. So the first real question here, and out of which comes all of our basic management practices, is what does soil life need to exist? Obviously, it needs to be fed by the plant. What else does the soil life need to exist? Bacteria and fungi. Some basic categories.
Oxygen, water.
What's that?
Oxygen.
Oxygen,
water.
air. Yes, air is big.
Air. Minerals.
It needs the elements in the soil, exactly, for its biochemistry.
Water.
Water is really important. Yeah.
Carbon.
What's that?
Carbon.
Carbon, which is either coming in the form of this liquid sugar carbon or in the form of plant residue or mulch or compost. But when you don't have carbon in the soil, you're not going to have a healthy biological ecosystem.
Nitrogen.
I'm going to put nitrogen with the minerals. Sunshine that comes along with it. In fact, some people, depending on whether you've got a yard or a farm, I'm guessing not everybody here has a farm. People have yards. Sunlight is one of those big factors that some people overlook. When you've got a big tall tree on the south side of your property line, that's going to really inhibit plant growth. So I don't usually talk much about sunshine, but you're totally right. It's a big one.
Temperature?
Temperature is also very important. I can put it on there, although it's not usually what I discuss at this time of the course. Usually I talk about it in the springtime when temperature is much more of an issue. You must have, obviously, we'll talk about temperature later. The last thing I have is the species themselves, biology. Our understanding of the spectrum of microbiology, the number of species, their functional capacities, etc., is remarkably limited as I understand it. We can ballpark some number of millions of species of soil life that exist, 3, 4, 5 million species, out of which maybe 5% have been named, as I understand it. So being named does not mean they're fully understood, it means they've been named. That means 95% of the species have not even been named yet. We do know that when things like nuclear fallout from the atomic testing in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s came through and dropped on, a lot of species got wiped out. We do know that when acid rain came through, a lot of species got wiped out. When DDT came through in the rain, we have environmental pollutants, not only if you've got an old farm field that's been chemically treated or tilled, we have species that are knocked out, but just historical environmental pollution that is part of today's day and age. So in many cases, you don't have the spectrum of species present in your soil that your plants need. So that's one last thing I'd like to talk about managing for inoculation. My understanding, in my experience, has been that you can take any worn out piece of land and rapidly revitalize it if you create an environment for life to flourish. That life is really, really sophisticated and multifaceted and nuanced, and if you can take care of some of these basic components, if you can, inoculate so you can get the basic minerals in place, you don't till so much so the soil's not too compacted, you got air in there, you let it be, maintain hydration, whether through keyline or something like that, which is a really wise strategy, or drip tape or whatever it is. If you can create an environment where your soil's covered, it's alive, it's got its basic ingredients present, it will take care of itself, and it'll rapidly break down whatever toxic residues are present. People have heard of Paul Stamets, I'm guessing, a mycologist. I think he, among other things, he's noted for having identified the world's largest living organism. But he's found species of fungi that eat radioactive waste, right? I mean, it's like, whoo, electron, that was good. It's no longer a radioactive isotope, right? We took the extra electron off it, and it's no longer a radioactive isotope. Digesting, DDT or any of these hardcore serious chemicals is possible, and only possible, as I understand it, really through the bacteria and the fungi, through that set of species. Radioactive isotopes are sort of a natural background, thing. The oil in the Gulf a couple years ago, when that blew off, whatever it was called, Deepwater Horizon, they were using inoculants. They were inoculating the ocean to digest the oil. We can work with bacteria and fungi to do absolutely amazing things to clean up the environment. So I think it's incumbent on us to understand that we think we're growing plants because that's what we can see. But really what we're trying to do, as far as I'm concerned, is build this whole ecosystem. At the bottom of the food chain is the bacteria and the fungi.